policy for exactly what kind of documents should be on the town website. And a real way for getting things like the Trails Committee to submit for the record certain kinds of documents. We actually don't know which ones to do. I think probably that's enough of an introduction to what I see as a policy issue for the town to wrestle with.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so I can't speak to the Trails Committee, Doug. The Parks and Recreation Department, the reason they have a separate website is because of the registration process for all our recreation activities. So
Yes,
that's
a lot of stuff that is not of interest to the town.
well,
But
no, let me finish. People are registering for lots of programs, and the Parks and Rec Department website is configured specifically for large numbers of family and child registrations. So if you hit the Parks and Recreation Department tab on the town website, it takes you directly to their website. So it's pretty hard to get lost unless you don't click on the department tab. And in terms of the Trails Committee and replacement of maps, and I think that's an issue that we need to take up with Vicky, Rob, and the Conservation Commission, because I can't speak specifically to that issue. We work very hard to maintain the updating of all of our web pages, but there's a limit to the amount of information we can make available on the website. And so sometimes folks like yourself will call and we'll go into our actual records to find something for you if it's not on the website. So just because it's not on the website doesn't mean it's disappeared from the town's care. It's just that there's only so much information we can make reasonably accessible from the website.
but when we're maintaining our own website, and we don't know what we really ought to be sending to people, for example.
So that's a conversation I'll tee up
That,
with.
of course, is but because I see that there are other websites, Parks and Recreation minutes, for example, are not on the town website.
They don't have a board that convenes any longer,
We
Doug.
don't.
Right, so that's why there are no minutes to read.
That is real.
It was not a charter required board, and so the board stopped meeting about 2.5 or 3 years ago, so that's why you don't find any minutes.
Okay, you bring up good points, Doug. Thank you. Okay, the next item of business is the continued discussion about bridge bond options. Tina, welcome to introduce yourself. One wants good news tonight.
I hope so. Tina Stearns, I am the admin finance director for the town.
Please, would you grab that mic so you speak it right into it?
There we go.
Thank you.
Before you have all the paperwork. I know that you voted last meeting, so I had to know that draw all the paperwork for the bond. They had discussions with Mascoma Bank. Mascoma stuck with the 2.04% for the 10 years, and when it pushes into the 11th year, they have put a cap on it of 2.95%. So it will not exceed that, which is still lower than what we were going to get from the bond bank.
Yes.
And this is still a 1-year line of credit. I have been talking with Public Works, so fingers crossed that the bridge projects come in at less than the 950. So if that is the case, then we only move over into a bond with Mascoma of what we actually need.
That's great news.
Great news.
Good work.
And if the board is comfortable with that, I have lots of things you all have to sign tonight. right?
Private session.
Pardon me?
You want us to do that
We
right now? or in
can, we can
private
do
session?
this in non-public session.
Non-public.
Yep, if you want to time then to sign all the tabs.
So we still have the option to pay off early,
Yes, we do.
which you would not have with the bond bank.
That's correct. And with
Okay.
the bond bank, if we went that route, we would have to bond the 950.
Right.
So we stuck with that.
Right, and then the other clarification is we don't know what to expect from the federal government. we don't know what possibly the town could gain. So let's assume for the moment that there is some money related to bridges. Could we then get that money for other bridges? Because you can't use it to pay off a loan. I mean, I'm just trying to understand what other options or could possibly be down on the horizon. I know you can't predict right now, but just I try to
Right, I
understand what
mean, we could theoretically swap out the bridges we just completed for bridges we have in the next 5 to 10 year timeframe. So
so we have flexibility.
we have some flexibility, right?
Thanks.
Well, the only, I think the only downside to the Mascoma loan that we could was not having a predictable interest rate for the second 10 years. And with that off the table now, it makes even that discussion easier. So, well done.
Okay.
So, do we need a motion to?
No, so the board voted on this at your last meeting, but with this research done, we wanted to just provide that update to the board before you executed the documents.
Right. And when we go through the minutes of the last meeting, I'm going to ask that the vote be more specific about what the bond issue was. And
Well, you could make a cleaner motion right now, Peter, that way.
I think that makes sense.
You don't have to
Let's not redo it. Let's,
just write into one.
Yeah.
I guess the motion would be to adopt what's the right word? Enter into a 20-year loan with Mascoma with the terms as described with 2.04% for the first 10 years and not to exceed 3.95
no, 2.95.
2.95.
for the second 10 years with a 1-year line of credit and prepayment options.
I'll second that motion.
Further discussion?
I think the only thing I'd like to say is awesome that we can do this with a local lending institution right here in our town. And, thanks for making it happen. I think it's just great work.
And we won't have to go, you know what, as Mac was worried about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We need to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay, we have now
Committed?
entered into a 10-year.
This is a moment, Carrie.
Yeah. I didn't see Carrie jumping up and down to prevent us from doing this. I assume she's with us.
Yes, we have had discussions.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Third item is the continued discussion of tax rate targets for FY 22-23. Update, Julia?
Well, if the board recalls, I suggested you wait until tonight to set your tax rate target. If you felt more comfortable until we knew what the actual tax rate was going to be for the bills that just went out. And as the board knows, we were able to finalize a tax rate of 2.5% and only use $50,000 of undesignated fund balance as opposed to the up to $350,000 that we thought we might need to utilize. In large part, the reason that we were able to do that is that the state agreed to, or the legislature funded a sort of a one biennium increase in the share of rooms and meals tax revenue going to every city and town in the state. Not a permanent increase, which is what it should be. But as I'm fond of saying, hush money to keep us quiet. And that number for the town resulted in another $250,000 on our MS1, which DRA added. So we didn't have the number verified, and DRA was plugging all those numbers into people's MS1s, which are the forms that are required for them to set the tax rate. So that right there helped reduce our need to draw down undesignated fund balance to the tune of $250,000. But it's a one-time hit improvement, unless we can convey our deep desire that the legislature, in fact, make that increase permanent going forward. But I doubt that's likely to happen, particularly with this pretty fiscally conservative legislature now seated. So anyway, the good news is we were able to minimize our draw on undesignated fund balance, which makes me feel better. So that puts us into this fiscal year with a very healthy fund balance going forward and gives us the opportunity when we're putting the budget together for the board in the next 2 months to take a look at, all right, what one-time expenditures, project type expenditures do we have in the budget that we might be able to allocate to undesignated fund balance rather than building into the tax rate.
Okay, at the last meeting, I suggested that we set a target of between 3.5 and 3.9% increase in the tax rate. Any more thoughts about that suggestion or other suggestions? All right, please introduce yourself.
Kari, yes, Mr. Chair of the Hanover Finance Committee, and I have one clarifying question that was asked of me, and that was, the question is, did that include considerations for the negotiations that are going on right now with the unions, or would that be an additional on top of?
No, so Kari, whatever tax rate target the board sets, we'll have to be able to include under that tax rate target the impact of negotiations. Certainly, that's an issue the board took into consideration as we talked about tax rate target, but I don't have the ability to bring a tax rate plus COLAs for bargaining unit employees or for all employees for that matter.
So the
Thank you for
hope,
that clarification. That was, I would say that the one, the one key clarification.
Right, right.
I think that's why we're where we are, 3.5% and 3.9%, because we're going into negotiations.
Right.
I mean, it's higher than we normally go. There's a number of factors that's putting us at that target, right?
When you looked at the projections, they indicated that we needed to be up in that range to hold our own this year without any significant new initiatives.
Great.
Yeah, the issue is, as everyone knows, the competitive job market out there is probably one of the worst we've seen in decades. And it's just a reality that the salaries are moving fast and furious. And of our budget, 70% is salaries and benefits.
Right. Right. And so with that in mind, I mean, we have really good staff and we want to make sure we keep them.
Right. Right, absolutely. And we're watching all the trends in terms of municipal wage scales in New Hampshire, our competitor communities, and will be over the next several months. Obviously, the CPI is not going in the right direction either in terms of the impact of CPI on our costs, but this, we're going to have to deliver a budget to you all that includes whatever cost of living adjustment the select board may authorize and take to town meeting in bargaining unit contracts. That has to be included underneath the target.
Julie, as always, I'm sure you'll come back to us with those items that had to be cut, those items that were sort of last to be
Right,
make it to the list, and if these percentages are just unrealistic, we just regroup and
right,
talk about it.
right. Mhm.
There's a card, please.
Yeah. So that the idea of regrouping is something also that the finance committee was sort of interested in following developments maybe a little bit more closely as the budget went through this year. So if there is a need to come back and reevaluate that target, it would be helpful if we could hear some of the considerations, because we find that, we see the dots, but if we're going to explain how the dots were connected, it's good to have heard that along the way. I also wanted to say, I forgot to mention earlier, Carrie Callahan is listening in. He couldn't attend in person, but I had told him that I would at some point ask if other finance committee members had any questions or comments. So Carrie, I hope you are hearing this, and if you have anything to ask or add, that would be a good time.
Thank you. So with respect to the infrastructure bill that was passed, is there anything out of that bill and how it might percolate down to Hanover that's a wild card for next year's budget?
So Carrie, it is way too early to know in that we have a broad brush sense of what may be coming, but until the NOFA, which are all the details, the notice of funding is released, which could be March or April, we won't know the details. So at this point, we are beginning to pull together some potential projects that we could package, not shovel ready, so to speak, but at least sort of shovel ready, that are ready to go, be dusted off and submitted quickly once we see what the notice of funding from the federal government looks like. So my guess is that the issues where we may see some funding potential, broadband, which, you know, we don't fund broadband projects per se, although we've done some through our cable franchise fee revenue, but broadband is a big emphasis. And then there's also a very big emphasis on water and wastewater projects and bridges and some bicycle and pedestrian pieces. But the big question in my mind is what kinds of roads, highways, sidewalks, projects are going to be eligible. So we won't know until after the board probably adopts this budget, unfortunately. So all we can do is sort of get ready to submit proposals when the NOFA is released.
Thank you. Just to be clear, it sort of sounds like anything that might come out of that would not relieve budget expenditures. It might just be on top of that. Is that the right way to think about that?
Yeah, although one option, Carrie, what you can do is submit a project for funding. And if that money comes through and enables you to save some general fund budgeted expenditure, then we can adjust downward the expenditure line items when we submit our MS1 for tax rate setting in August or September of 2022. So while it may not shake out yet or be evident at town meeting, very often it comes in over the summer and we can then use it to offset expenditures in the MS1, so that after the fact, we can deliver a tax rate that's lower than we'd anticipated because projects that were funded in the general fund budget are suddenly eligible for federal funding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and thank
Well
you
done.
for allowing that. Given the current status of infections, it just seemed like the prudent way to go.
Yeah,
So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Barry.
So.
I have a quick question, just in terms of the money or the funding that we still has to go through the NOFA and all that.
Right.
But are there any monies for that you've read about for recreation facilities or health and wellness facilities like bricks and mortar? Have you heard?
Not that I've heard yet, Joanna. We're waiting for, we have about a half a dozen national organizations that we all rely on to sort of keep us updated. The National League of Cities being the one that has the biggest presence on the Hill. And they are pouring through the legislation and hope to release something in early January in terms of preliminary. So at this point, we simply know the broad brush potential projects and don't have much guidance below that.
Okay, thanks.
So I don't think there's a formal vote needed, but.
No, but it sounds like what the board is saying is 3.5 to 3.9%. And Kari, certainly what will, in light of your comments from the Finance Committee, typically what we do is come up with a first draft budget sometime in the third week of January, once we've done all the department head meetings. Then I know how much I have to cut from what's been requested in terms of funding levels from the departments to meet the tax rate target factoring in some assumptions on the salary expense side. If we're way out of whack, that's the time I would normally come to the board in late January and say, okay, so Houston, I think we have a problem. But I won't know, we won't know, Tina and I and the department heads won't know until we go through all of these budgets. Our meetings begin next week. And we finish up the first week in January and then spend a couple of weeks digesting the numbers, plugging in everything, hitting a button, taking a look at the bottom line and saying, okay, we've got to make some cuts. So I'll know much more, we'll know much more third week in January.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that item is clear. I move that we accept a $1,000 amount from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation for the Headlight Fund in general support and honor of Barbara Prince for Etna Library.
Second?
So you can tell us the Headlight Fund.
Yeah, it's the first time I've heard of the Headlight Fund, Peter, so I'm not familiar with it in detail, but it's clear that a group of Etna Library users who love that library wanted to do something special as a thank you, a remembrance of Barbara's work with the library. And I sense that there was some planning that went on, some conversation that went on that led to some donations flowing in simultaneously.
Motion moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I move that we accept a donation of $200 from David and Ann Chaffee, thanking Barbara and Caroline for their many years of service at the Etna Library.
I'll second that motion. I think that sounds awesome. This is
Awesome.
like, just think what's gonna happen if we do this for Julia. This might be a new system.
This could offset the tax rate.
Yeah, this might bring taxes way down. That's terrible. That's terrible.
All right, so thank you to David and Ann, all those in favor?
Aye.
Approved.
I didn't know Caroline retired too.
Caroline retired about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
she, yep. But they were a team. for
Yeah,
many
no,
years.
I
Yeah.
know.
And then I move that we accept a donation from the Muriel and Edward Hampshire Charitable Foundation in the amount of $500 for non-funded projects and for the Jerry Nunnaly Memorial Lecture Series.
Second.
You can tell us something about this one.
Again, these all came in simultaneously, Peter. And the Memorial Lecture Series is part of programming that happens at the Etna Library. So these are all part and parcel of supporting the institution.
Okay. I saw that the gift was signed by Susan Putnam.
Right.
Is that, so she must be certainly a part of the charitable foundation.
Yep,
Like the executive officer.
right, right. Pretty nice.
Very nice. There was a motion, was a second.
Yes, Nancy.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Again, passed unanimously. Next item is a banner request. We have two, one from the Dartmouth office and one from Hopkins Center.
Correct, and we can accommodate both of them.
One question I did have was the, grab it here.
So I'll move.
Was it?
Well, it's
Yeah.
probably better if I don't second it.
Yeah. Nancy.
I'm happy to second.
Okay. Peter, you have some comments?
Thank you. Now there's a motion on the table.
Which one are you looking at, Peter?
The Black Legacy Month, is this a political organization? I think I'm just
No.
trying to get back of our guidelines.
No, this is a Dartmouth program.
Okay.
And it is, so this is the follow-on to the Martin Luther King 3-day week, the national holiday weekend, and Dartmouth has really moved into focusing on a legacy month and not just a day, with lectures, performances, presentations.
Great.
Yes,
Educational.
yes, yes.
I would, I know they have graphics people, but I find that very hard to read. Yellow from afar, but you know,
Yeah,
they know
yeah.
more than I do on that. So
Yeah.
I might just be old.
Okay,
Okay, any more questions? None of those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Minutes of November 15. Had some changes. I move we adopt the minutes.
okay.
Get them on the table. So here a second. to adopt them. Yes, okay.
I'll second that.
Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Yes, I have a few.
Okay,
Okay, so, under the 3A bridge bond,
yep,
we're down to the fourth line, longer than 10 years. Then I'd like it to read, they can give a 20-year note, strike but insert with a fixed rate of 2% for 10 years, and then a insert negotiated
yep,
strike variable
yep,
rate for the remaining 10 years.
okay,
Strike that would be decided in the 11th year.
strike, okay, yep,
I'll show you.
Okay. yep.
And then on page 2 of 4,
Mhm.
where Christie moved to start a 20-year loan as presented, insert as presented.
Mhm.
I think page 1 says what was presented.
Right. Okay,
But I was going to make it clearer. And then I have a whole new section on under 8A,
8A,
and I'll give it to you in type format, so you don't have to wait quickly, but I'd like
okay,
the, under Chair Peter Christie, I'd like to read. Chair Christie reported that the annual meeting of the Trescott Company was held on November 2nd. There's only one more year of logging planned on the Trescott land before at least a 10-year hiatus.
yep,
The Trescott Company has adequate cash reserves to pay its operating expenses during that period with no revenue.
yep,
And continue, Chair Christie also reported that the Hanover Conservation Commission members, along with other volunteers, removed invasive species from the Hayes Farm this past weekend. The commission's Trails Committee has been working on potential trails in the Mink Brook Community Forest, and has determined that the trail project will be a bit more difficult than originally thought.
so if you give me that text, Peter,
You have it.
thank you, and it's typed, right? Blessings upon, it's typed, right?
You can read, I didn't ask you to read my.
Picturing what that would have been like.
You all know better than that. Okay, then on page 4, just continue under item 3A, Chair Christie moved to start a 20-year loan, insert as presented with Mascoma Bank, strike, which supports a 1-year line of credit and option to repay. I'll give you these.
Thank you,
I think
Peter.
it just makes it a little.
Yeah,
clearer
yeah,
what we
okay.
were up to.
Yep,
Any other changes?
So just to make it clear, Peter, you have that in last meeting's minutes, and you have the newly formulated motion.
Motion for tonight.
Correct.
yep,
Thank you.
Or additions, solutions.
if you give me your notes, Peter, I'll make sure to get those
So,
incorporated.
again, so the motion is on the table to adopt these minutes as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? They are adopted. Julia, good luck.
Thank you.
Some of that is my handwriting.
Yeah, you know, it's as long as it's a sentence, but when it's a paragraph, I'm in trouble.
Administrative report.
So just a COVID update for the community. It's gotten busy again. The Hanover and Lebanon have the highest number of cases we've had since the beginning of the pandemic. 117 in Hanover today, 127 in Lebanon. And as you know, Althos isn't here tonight because they're slammed at the hospital. So we're we're continuing to stay focused on just supporting the community. It's been very quiet. People are calm, I think, because so many people are vaccinated. We are the middle school is hosting a booster blitz, as they call it, clinic on Saturday, the 11th. Within 24 hours, all the slots were taken statewide. So there are 20 sites, I believe, active in the state, and they filled 10,000 slots in 24 hours. So my guess is that they'll be doing additional clinics because the pharmacies are certainly very busy and now booking into January for booster appointments. And we are providing 4 firefighter paramedics. Lebanon is providing 6 firefighter paramedics who will work from 9 to 3, which is the length of the clinic, to do the immunizations with other volunteers from the Medical Reserve Corps. So my guess is that the state may well do another one, likely right after the holidays, but perhaps the weekend after this coming weekend, so the weekend of the 17th and 18th. And so we're focused on trying to support the state when they ask us to. They don't typically give us a whole lot of notice, but that's just the way of the world right now. And we're also working with the Public Health Council of the Upper Valley on in-school booster vaccination clinics, as well as doing door-to-door vaccination boosters for individuals who can't get out to get vaccinated. So our fire department led that effort for the region back in the spring, and likely will be getting involved in the booster side of this again as the state starts to make those plans more detailed. I am meeting with the provost on Wednesday, and I'm sure one topic of conversation will be what are the plans for the college for the return of students. You know, a month ago, we might have been talking about being able to look for eliminating the mask requirement, but I somehow don't think that's going to be a topic of conversation when I speak with Dave on Wednesday. We are providing support to the colleges. They quickly look to ready additional beds for potential isolation in the event students are acquire the virus and need to be in isolation for a period of time. And that often requires that staff move pretty quickly to review and permit and inspect sites that are rapidly configured for isolation and taken out of availability as regular dorm rooms. So we stand ready to help with that as well. That's it for administrative reports.
Do you have any sense of obviously the numbers across the state, even in Vermont, are gone so high, that in Hanover and Lebanon, is there any pattern? Is there any groups, or is it just all the above issues?
So I know the most about the college cases, Bill, because the college has got a very helpful dashboard that they update daily. The cases have been very mild. And this is Delta now, not Omicron. They've typically been mild cases involving people who are fully vaccinated and are not significantly impacting their lives. They're just in isolation because they don't want to spread it to other people. I suspect Alvis would tell you that what they continue to see at the hospitals that are now very close to, if not at capacity, is that the vast bulk of their patients are unvaccinated, who end up being hospitalized because of severe COVID illness. But I have not heard that any of the residents who are currently in our 117 number for the town of Hanover are seriously ill. So my guess is also, and this is a guess, I don't know this for a fact, I think we have a community that's very good at reporting a positive COVID test to the state. If you don't report that positive test, the state doesn't know that you're a number. And so one of the reasons I think our numbers may be high in comparison with other communities is that we happen to have an institution here that has an excellent testing program and reporting program. And we also have a large number of medical professionals who are reporting their positive COVID tests, or those of their family members, because that's what you do. That's not always the case in other communities, who aren't working in the medical community. And it doesn't even occur to them that the state would like you to report a positive antigen test, for example. If you do a driveway test and say, oops, it's positive. So,
Thank you.
So I have a couple things. One is, what are we doing for our staff in terms of testing? Are we coordinating? Are we doing any kind of testing or figuring out a way to make testing available for our staff as well as for, working with the school districts and the college to make something happen there? So not just the college folks are tested, but I don't know if there's anything that we can do.
So we don't have, as municipalities, Joanna, we don't have access to test kits that the state would make available. The school districts do, but municipalities don't. So one of the things we did when the word came out that the state was making home test kits available is immediately alerted all of our employees so that as many of them as possible could get in the queue to request their test kits. So a lot of our employees signed up right away on the state website to get test kits. What we are talking about is acquiring some for the town. We have some through the fire department, but a limited number. Right now, what we're requiring is that for anybody who has COVID-like symptoms, we ask them to be tested. We prefer a PCR test over an antigen test. But antigen is often a good first, lower barrier test that people can do. Employees who become ill are required to have a PCR test and to observe the quarantine requirements if they're living with a family member who tests positive for COVID. But we are not yet doing regular testing of our staff who are asymptomatic.
But it's pretty hard to get a PCR test.
It's actually gotten easier.
Good.
And the results are coming back much more quickly in the last 2 weeks. So the state has really stepped up its testing capacity in response to criticism because it was getting increasingly difficult to get a PCR test and to get results within 48 to 72 hours. We're now, for the most part, our employees are able to get same-day appointments to do drive-through at APD or DH and to have the results in less than 24 hours. So that's an improvement.
Yep. And then my final question is, if we have the highest rates we've ever had of COVID, why are we in a room together having our meeting?
Because we have to be. Because
So
the state
Okay,
the state says we have to be here. A quorum of you has to be here. So 3 of you must be here. 1 of you could be at home right now, but you all decided you didn't want to do the hybrid meetings. We can certainly return to the hybrid meeting if you want to, but in New Hampshire, you cannot meet physically, legally, unless you have a quorum. And for this board, that's 3 members sitting in this room. It's, yes.
So the next logical question is, that was the case previously, then the governor, I guess, through action said you can't do it anymore. And now with the numbers, is there any serious discussion to change that thought process? Just say no if it's not.
No, sadly, Bill, this legislature is crazy. They refuse to talk about this. They refuse to require their members wear masks in the State House. They refuse to support the governor in initiating a statewide mask mandate. They refuse to acknowledge that this is something we should be concerned about. They refuse to hold their meetings remotely.
So no change there.
okay, thank you. Sorry to.
Quick question. I understand that the students and staff of the college are covered. So for our viewing public, can they, as an individual, if they feel as though they have symptoms, go to APD or DHMC?
Yeah,
themselves?
it's very easy to make an appointment for a COVID test. If you go to the nh.gov and hit on the COVID button on the homepage of the state website, it'll take you to an interactive page and there's a tab you can click that's as big as you can possibly make it that says, need a COVID test. You type in your zip code and it directs you to the locations in our region that are testing. But I can tell you the 2 places where everybody is going are DHMC and APD, and they both have drive-through testing facilities.
Thank you.
administrative report. All right. Selectboard reports. Joanna.
I don't have anything to report.
Hi, so your planning board is going to be, oh, thanks. Your planning board is going to be meeting in this room tomorrow night, 7:30. And their agenda includes zoning amendments for town meeting 2022. So far, we have 9 ideas for zoning amendments. Whether all 9 will come to fruition, but a lot of fodder for interesting amendments. There's also going to be a substantial update on the sustainability master plan, and a couple of folks have asked me where that is. All you need to do is type in Hanover master plan, all one word, all lowercase.com, and it comes up, and I can't recommend strongly enough to go see it. It's a very wonderful site with a lot of interesting ideas and should keep people captivated.
Nancy, could you repeat that website?
Certainly, Hanover Master Plan, all one word, all lowercase.com. It's
Thank
a
you.
really good website. It's an excellent website.
I have a report, Bill.
I'll just share with you and the public that, if you recall, as we've begun the process for our town manager search, that we asked this community to participate in a survey. And I'm pleased to share with you that we had 570 people participate. And our consulting firm is processing, so that's a lot of detail to process. So I'll call it the near future, which I'll not define because I don't know exact details yet, that we will put on the website a link to be able to review a summary of, not every single comment will be there, obviously, but a reasonable detailed summary of the observations of our community. So thank you for those who participated.
Excellent. Any other business? I thought the festivities on Friday night were great fun. Anne looks wonderful coming in tonight. It looked sensational on Friday night. Well done.
Yeah, I said-
Saturday, the chili cook-off was terrific.
I said to Julia, I think it was the biggest crowd I've seen on a sidewalk on Main Street. It was Friday night, when you had to walk sideways to get past people because everyone was having so much fun. So it was great.
Great. And then this weekend, there's something on Saturday. Let's take this
Well,
time
there's a
to.
progressive dinner on Friday night, that's reservations required, that will be happening on Allen Street in the Huts, and a bunch of restaurants are participating if folks have been registering through the Parks and Recreation Department. And then on Saturday, we have an event called Snow Much Fun, which is also happening on Allen Street, that's being run by our Parks and Recreation Department. So
That's an afternoon event.
that's
right?
an afternoon, a noon
Noon
to
to 2
2
or something,
event on Saturday. So lots of things happening this weekend as well, all outdoors, and
That's great.
Okay. There's been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91A32 A, C, and E.
Bill Garrity, yes.
Peter Christie, yes.
Nancy Carter, yes.
Joanna Whitcomb, yes.
Okay, we're in non-public session. Thank you all.